Visions of a distant family blur within her tearful, shining eye.
A clear portrait reveals a royal family smiling and happier times.
The tiny fairy marvels at the soul's successful rebirth into a new body. A somber truth remains: she died in her past life. Memories of a joyous wedding to a prince linger like fallen petals. Prince Solace and his bride receive a divine blessing from Saintess Jeanette. She reflects on the unique light magic possessed only by chosen saintesses. A tender touch shared between the couple during their holy union. The bride looks away, lost in a quiet, blushing moment. The ceremony continues with the guidance of the glowing blonde saintess. Jeanette joyfully announces that the marriage union is officially complete. Solace offers his sincere gratitude to the saintess for her divine service. The dark-haired woman recalls a childhood overshadowed by her parents' favoritism toward her brother. Melodic music fills the air during the grand wedding reception.
The bride is met with judging stares as she celebrates with wine.
Her father sternly warns her against bringing any shame to their family. He commands her to hide her magic to avoid being labeled a witch. Anxiety takes hold as she considers her father's harsh secret ultimatum. Magical talent is a rare and dangerous gift in this kingdom. Hidden beneath chains, the truth of her dark magic remains her father's secret. Guests cruelly whisper that the saintess is more deserving of the prince's hand. In this realm, her black eyes are seen as symbols of misfortune. Despite the kingdom's prejudice, she possesses a terrifyingly immense magical power. A heavy silence falls as she vows to keep her secret hidden. Celebrations continue unabated across the crowded, glittering ballroom floor.
Scanning the room, she realizes someone important has suddenly gone missing.
A chilling realization washes over the bride's startled face. She overhears a cruel comment through a cracked door, lamenting her marriage. Another voice echoes the sentiment, revealing a shared betrayal behind the door. Trembling with shock, she peers into the private royal chamber. She discovers the silver-haired prince locked in an embrace with the saintess. Solace shouts in alarm, demanding to know why his fiancé is intruding. He cruelly banishes her, shattering her belief in his honesty on their wedding day. Horror and betrayal freeze her heart as she faces the prince's infidelity. The prince brands her a malicious woman as royal guards rush in.
Jeanette suddenly clings to her, feigning terror and begging for help.
A spark of red light flickers within her eye as emotions surge. The saintess tearfully accuses the bride of physical assault before the crowd. Her eyes burn a cursed red as she desperately denies the lies. The king watches in shock as guards violently tackle the bride. While the prince comforts her, Jeanette reveals a cold, triumphant smirk.
Dark butterflies swarm as she screams her innocence against the growing shadows.
A surge of ominous energy erupts toward the horrified elderly king. Jeanette cowers in theatrical fear while the guards surround the Gaul. The saintess collapses, leading the crowd to believe she has been wounded. Uncontrollable dark magic lashes out as she reaches a desperate breaking point. Divine chains manifest, seeking to bind the heretical power she has unleashed. Ensnared by holy shackles, she is condemned as a soul possessed by evil. The church prepares to purge the satanic influence they believe is controlling her.
She reaches out for help, but Solace turns away with utter disgust.
A harsh, off-screen command orders her immediate imprisonment. Dark, brutal torture begins within the cold stone cell walls. Jeanette taunts her through the bars, claiming the devil resides in her tongue. The blonde woman cruelly suggests that both her tongue and eyes should be removed. She lies mutilated and broken, having lost her ability to speak or see. Solace comforts the saintess near the cage, dismissively blaming the victim for her fate. The silver-haired prince justifies her punishment despite her apparent possession by evil. He coldly orders her execution by beheading to purge the imperial family's shame. As she is dragged away, her death sentence is officially finalized. Jeers and insults follow the woman as she is labeled a villain.
The crowd mocks her dark features, comparing her unfavorably to the homeless.
A guard prepares the guillotine while Jeanette delivers a final, mocking message. Jeanette leans in to reveal that her own family celebrates her impending death. The saintess thanks her victim for the sacrifice that paved the way for her marriage. Jeanette feigns terror for the crowd when the broken woman tries to scream. The executioner's blade drops, ending her first life in a spray of blood. Her soul lingers on the question of why her life was so cruel. She wonders if the color of her hair and eyes invited such hatred. Shimmering spirits gather, sensing the immense magic within her shattered spirit. They pity the immense abuse she suffered for her rare gift. The entities decide to wash away the lingering stench of her suffering. They choose to rescue the girl despite her soul's tattered state. a fairy reaches down to pull her soul from the darkness. The scene shifts to the bright, glittering halls of a new palace. A pink-haired queen cradles her child as a sudden, loud wah echoes. Baby Maribel lets out a heart-wrenching wah while she continues to cry. Her blonde-haired father vows to protect her with his immense royal dower.
The queen beams with joy as she looks at her new daughter.
Maribel stares up with wide, shimmering blue eyes full of wonder.
She reflects on the profound happiness of being born into a new family. Clenching her small fist, she feels the remnants of her past darkness vanish.
Memories of those who betrayed her still flicker behind their innocent gaze. She curls into a ball, terrified that her new family might learn to hate her.
The queen gently asks if Maribel has finally fallen asleep. A bright red flower catches the baby's attention in her print. A toddler peers over the rail, emitting a soft and curious "go" from his lips.
Her young brother joyfully presents her with a gift of flowers.
The blonde-haired boy hugs his mother's legs after greeting the baby.
He marvels at how cute his little sister is as she watches him.
Maribel compares her new angelic life to her past as a condemned demon. Surrounded by white blossoms, she embraces her role as the kingdom's princess.
Fairies dance around the cradle, bestowing their magical blessings upon the baby. Maribel stares in shock, wondering if she is truly seeing real fairies.
A cheerful fairy smiles down at the reborn princess.
The attendants discuss the rare and special celebration the fairies have brought.
She reaches for the spirits, her movement accompanied by a light, fluttering fly.
The queen notices her daughter's sudden, tearful distress as the magic fades.
Her mother tries to soothe her, asking if she misses the visiting fairies. A final spirit flutters near her tiny hand before disappearing.
The queen holds Maribel close, promising that she will always be loved.
She learns that while fairies are mostly mischievous, frightening dark fairies also exist. Dark spirits of nature share power with these beings, leaving Maribel visibly unsettled.
The pink-haired queen smiles down at her child with immense warmth.
Nature dictates whether a fairy is viewed as good or bad.
As the queen carries her daughter, a sudden, sharp tap sounds. King Malik stands tall, looking grave and resolute.
Maribel is horrified to realize she has been reborn in the kingdom where she was once executed.
Deep religious and cultural divides fuel the eternal conflict between the kingdoms of Eret and Wad.
Wad's constant border threats force King Malik to lead his army into the field.
She notes that Wad's aggression has only increased since Jeanette and Saltis joined forces under the guise of divine will.
Amidst the tension, Maribel emits a soft, babyish wah while her parents share a final moment.
The king and queen share a tender embrace before his departure.
Their young son Randy joins them, his expression serious for his age.
Randy's eyes wide with sudden surprise or excitement.
The king offers a gentle, reassuring smile to his family. Leaving the safety of the palace, the king immediately heads to the border with his full army. Night falls and the crackle of a hallway torch sounds a soft pop.
A solitary guard stands watch in the shadowed, quiet corridor.
As Randy drifts into sleep, he is comforted by the thought that his mother and Maribel are safe.
A sinister, blood-stained blade glints in the darkness, a single drop of blood falling from its tip.
A trail of blood and fallen guards marks the path of an intruder through the palace halls. Unaware of the carnage outside, the queen and Maribel sleep peacefully in their chamber.
The baby rests quietly, her breathing soft and rhythmic.
A small ethereal fairy hovers over the sleeping royals, watching them sleep.
Enveloped in the queen's embrace, Maribel feels safe and warm.
Outside the royal chamber, 2 guards remain at their posts as a torch crackles nearby.
One guard pauses, sensing something amiss and wondering if something has happened.
An assassin stands over a freshly killed guard, their eyes glowing with a cold light.
A heavy footstep sounds a dull thud as someone approaches.
The corridor is stained red with the blood of the fallen as the assassin moves deeper into the palace. The fairy princess has decided to take revenge.
Someone's eyes snap wide open in a moment of sudden realization.
Waking up in the dead of night, Randy wonders why the palace has grown so unnervingly quiet.
Sensing danger, the young prince grabs a small dagger, a sharp clink sounding.
He cautiously peeks through the door, his heart racing with fear. Randy's breath hitches as he wonders if someone is lurking in the shadows ahead.
The sight of a brutally murdered guard leaves the young boy trembling with shock.
Randy stumbles with a gasp, his dagger clattering to the floor as he sees the massacre in the hallway.
He stares in pure horror, unable to believe the carnage before his eyes.
Desperate to save them, Randy runs toward his mother and sister, screaming their names.
A dark shadow looms over the bed where the queen and baby are still sleeping.
The assassin raises a jagged blade, preparing to strike the defenseless royals.
Randy bursts into the room screaming for the attacker to stop, catching the queen by surprise.
The queen looks up in terror as the cold steel of a blade flashes before her.
The assassin's strike is met with a sudden, violent impact.
White feathers scatter as the queen desperately calls upon the fairies for protection. A radiant fairy appears, manifesting a magical shield that stops the assassin in his tracks. The divine barrier holds firm against the intruder's weapon, shimmering with light. Maribel watches the scene with wide, glowing eyes, gripped by shock.
The assassin seizes Randy as Maribel realizes they timed this attack for when her father was away.
Randy tackles the assassin, shouting for them to leave his mother alone. Distant, frantic cries from the hallway call out the young prince's name.
Maribel watches in terror as the assassin seizes Randy, her fear intensifying rapidly.
She dreads being hated again if her secret magic is revealed to the world.
The intruder looms over the defenseless baby, a wicked blade held ready to strike.
Her mother screams in desperation as Randy struggles to reach his sister.
Visions of her past life's execution haunt her, fueling a desperate will to live. She refuses to suffer again as a shimmering blue light begins to glow. Gripped by terror, she silently pleads for the nightmare to finally end. A violent explosion of dark and light magic erupts from the infant princess. Within the swirling shadows, ominous red eyes pierce through the chaotic darkness. The baby's cry echoes as the dark energy lashes out at the masked attacker. Struck by the powerful surge, the assassin lets out a pained arg. The attacker is thrown back while the queen realizes this is no ordinary power. She wonders if her daughter possesses true magic as the fairies watch in awe. The spirits panic, realizing Maribel is being consumed by her own overwhelming gift.
Randy grinds his teeth, desperately crawling back to protect his little sister.
A sudden, heavy blow lands with a sharp golpe sounding through the room. The brave brother pulls Maribel into a tight, protective embrace. He whispers for her not to cry while fairies prepare shieldings out. Magic rain falls as Randy collapses from his wounds while still holding her. Covered in blood, he smiles with relief before his eyes finally drift closed. The queen rushes to her children as Randy falls motionless across the bed.
Saltus berates his assassin for failing to kill a simple newborn baby.
The silver-haired prince realizes the princess has inherited an incredibly potent magical power. He admires the queen's beauty while Jeanette watches him with visible jealousy. Fearing the strength of Eret's fairies, he determines their kingdom is a major threat. He coldly decides to mobilize his entire army to wipe out the kingdom.
Jeanette smirks cruelly, promising that their god will favor his bloody conquest.
The palace is quiet as a maid carries a basin through the hall. Attendants try to soothe the queen, who remains deeply shaken by the attack. A soft, rhythmic glow begins to emanate from the baby's cradle. Maribel wakes up, confused to find herself still alive and safe. King Malik rushes into the room, pulling his wife into a relieved embrace. His expression turns grim as he reports that Randy has not yet awakened.
The fairies exchange worried glances, feeling the heavy weight of the situation.
Maribel is inconsolable, certain her own dangerous magic caused her brother's suffering.
She wails with guilt, her mind filled with apologies for her uncontrollable strength.
The queen kisses her forehead, promising that Randy will wake and that they are left.
A sudden commotion follows as a maid shouts that the prince has finally awakened. Randy sits up in his bed, looking tired but very much alive. He calls out for his parents and sister with a weak but happy smile. The family rushes to his bedside, overwhelmed with joy at his recovery.
Maribel's tears turn to joy as she watches her father approach her brother.
A voice from the shadows commends someone for their hard work. The fairies celebrate their successful intervention with a chorus of happy cheers. Shimmering dust fills the air as Randy assures his parents he is fine. The young prince looks at his sister with wide eyes and quiet wonder. The king and queen sit with their children. The crisis finally passed. Malik confirms that Maribel possesses the same magic they witnessed during the fight. Visions of her past life's discovery and the judgmental eyes of the court haunt her. A brown-haired fairy in a yellow dress looks down with a solemn expression. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Randy pulls his sister into a warm, protective hut.
A soft, warm squeeze sounds as the family shares a quiet, loving moment together.
King Malik offers a happy laugh as he praises his son for protecting the family. Randy asks about the nature of their magic while a vision of a dark, desperate figure appears. The queen explains that while spiritual power is borrowed, magic is a force taken by will.
A light, playful rustle sounds as her parents reassure the children that their power is a gift.
Malik smiles warmly, relieved to see his family safe and together once more. The king promises to find a tutor as Maribel wonders how they can accept her so easily.
Randy beams with a wide, happy grin, his joy lighting up the room. Maribel's eye reflects a shimmering world of magic and newfound hope.
The young princess smiles, her tiny hand clutching her brother's finger in the quiet room.
Ethereal spirits continue to flutter around the cradle, guarding the sleeping infant.
News of a nobleman's mysterious death in prison reaches the royal couple, heightening the tension.
Malik suspects the hand of the Wad Kingdom's leaders in the recent wave of assassinations. Maribel recalls the chilling face of Saintess Jeanette as the king warns of increasing border threats.
The queen listens with a troubled heart as the king details the growing danger. Wrapped in her blankets, the baby princess senses the encroaching shadows over their home. A soft, rhythmic breath sounds as the family huddles together in one bed for safety. Maribel remains wide awake, her mind racing with thoughts of the coming conflict. A sudden loud bang sounds as Randy bursts in, pillow in hand, wanting to sleep together. The baby watches her brother with wide eyes as he settles into the big bed. A soft, satisfied rustle sounds as the boy quickly drifts off to sleep beside his sister.
A tender, gentle squeeze sounds as the queen pulls Maribel into a loving embrace.
Comforted by her family's warmth, she realizes they will stand by her regardless of her power.
Visions of her enemies, Jeanette and Saltis, fuel her resolve to protect those she loves.
A low, menacing growl sounds as a black-haired boy leads a pack of blue-flamed wolves. A soft, hurried scuff sounds as someone mentions the boy's abduction. The mysterious child stands in the dark forest, his red eyes burning with a cold light. Surrounded by his loyal, supernatural pack, the boy prepares for his next move.
Back at the palace, a maid informs the queen that dinner is served.
The queen is startled by the time, realizing the day has passed so quickly.
She gazes out from the balcony, worried that the king has not yet returned from the border.
Darkness falls over the kingdom as the king's arrival is delayed.
The fairy princess has decided to take revenge.
The royal palace stands silent under the watchful gaze of the full man. A soft, rhythmic sigh sounds as Maribel settles in for her evening meal. A wide, sleepy yawn sounds as the infant princess struggles to keep her eyes open. The brown-haired fairy in yellow strikes a confident pose, eager for what's next. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the fairy suggests they begin her training immediately. A soft, tired roll sounds as Maribel tries to ignore the persistent spirit. A quick, playful tug sounds as the fairy refuses to let her sleep just yet. She explains the religious conflict, noting that Wood views their kingdom's beliefs as heresy. A soft, babyish coo sounds as Maribel considers her parents' incredible strength. The yellow fairy watches the princess closely, sensing a flicker of hidden power.
A low, resonant hum sounds as Maribel decides to test her magical abilities.
A sharp, crackling spark sounds as she manifests a tiny surge of energy, laughing with joy. The queen discusses the king's absence with her maids, her intuition warning of trouble.
Maribel looks on with concern, wondering if something has happened to her father.
Night falls over the quiet cause. A heavy sense of dread lingers. The yellow fairy offers a jar. A sharp gasp sounds as Maribel wakes. Spirits watch over the infant princess. A soft, glowing hum sounds as she sees. Her vision reaches the dark forest. Maribel sees Malik through the magic. A monstrous entity looms over the king. The giant wolf prepares its attack.
Maribel cries out to warn their father.
She tries to focus her power. Maribel struggles to control her magic. A shield manifests as Malik is struck. The king stares in pure disbelief. A heavy metallic clink sounds against paws. Knights surround the massive beast. Maribel's infant cry fills the room. Exhaustion takes hold of the baby. The fairy watches her with concern. She vows to master her gifts. A tiny hand reaches toward fate.
Years pass as morning light returns.
Preparations began at the Grand Castle. A royal banner flutters in the breeze. Maids hurry through the sun-and halls. The fairy admires the royal jewels. Her hair is brushed for the party. Randy enters to fetch his sister. Maribel greets her brother with joy.
Randy reports that the nobles for the ceremony have already gathered and hopes his sister can make many new friends.
Maribel laughs with genuine, bright happiness.
Maribel's 12th birthday celebration finally arrives.
The siblings walk toward the ballroom. Randy calls out to his sister. She turns to him with curiosity. Randy tells Maribel how beautiful she looks, but she laughs and calls him the real angel. Randy expresses his great happiness that their family can finally hold a ceremony like this.
Maribel asks her brother if the rumors about a kidnapping are actually true.
Randy looks down and notes that several nobles have already arrived at the palace. Nobles gossip about a boy kidnapped by fairies as Maribel listens to the strange story.
Narration describes the black demonic dog as a symbol of evil whose gaze can kill, while nobles mention a boy whose appearance changed from blonde to black hair with red eyes.
Maribel thinks the story is terrifying, while nobles gossip that the second son was rejected by his own parents.
The nobles mock the mysterious boy, wondering if he has learned to walk on 4 legs like a dog.
Randy warns Maribel to be careful at the party and avoid insects who aren't worthy of being called friends.
Maribel notices a strange maid in the garden that she doesn't recognize from the palace staff.
The siblings watch the arriving guests.
Malik hugs his daughter tightly, wishing her a very happy birthday as the celebration begins.
The Queen and Randy offer their heartfelt congratulations to the happy princess.
Maribel beams with pure, radiant joy.
Professor Crawley is greeted with enthusiastic applause from the palace staff and attendants. The green-haired professor looks slightly overwhelmed and flustered by the unexpected attention. A soft, rhythmic trot sounds as Maribel runs through the palace to find Professor Crawley. The princess happily asks him to attend her birthday ceremony later that evening. A soft, surprised gasp sounds as Crowley reacts to Maribel's sudden and persistent request. Maribel asks if the rumors about a boy kidnapped and returned by fairies are true.
Crowley confirms it refers to Alan Reed, son of Marquis Reed, noting how rarely such children return.
Maribel turns to her fairy companion, curious to hear the fairy's perspective on the abduction.
The yellow fairy excitedly identifies the act as a tradition called the Fairies' Exchange. She explains how fairies take human children they love on a whim, often out of affection. Maribel listens with growing concern, finding the idea of stealing a child from their family terrible. The young princess looks down, clearly troubled by the thought of the boy's isolation.
She empathizes with Alan's loneliness, recalling her own painful experiences in her past life.
A soft, tight gish sounds as Maribel clenches her dress in deep sympathy for the boy. A sudden loud wah sounds as Professor Crawley startles the daydreaming princess back to reality. The professor warns her to focus on her studies and avoid getting involved in troublesome matters.
A light, excited gasp sounds as Maribel beholds her magnificent birthday cake and decorations.
The arrival of the king, the queen, and the crown prince is formally announced to the guests. A soft rhythmic clap sounds as Princess Maribel is presented to the cheering crowd. King Malik and his family stand proudly at the top of the grand staircase.
Maribel glows with elegance and beauty amidst a sea of blooming pink roses.
While guests admire the princess, a dark-haired boy with red eyes enters the ballroom. Maribel freezes as her gaze locks onto the intense crimson eyes of the mysterious newcomer. She stares in silent shock, feeling an immediate and strange connection to the boy. A low, menacing growl sounds from a spectral, blue-flamed wolf that only Maribel can see.
A soft, steady scuff sounds as the boy moves through the crowd toward the upper levels. He exits the hall through a balcony door, leaving Maribel stunned by his cold presence.
The princess watches him leave, her mind racing with questions about his arrival. A soft, rhythmic plop sounds as a maid secretly drips a dark liquid into the wine glasses. A suspicious maid with purple-toned hair carries the tray of drinks with a silent, focused expression. A fellow servant stops her, noting that she is a new face among the palace staff. The stranger claims she was sent as extra help because of the large number of guests. She offers a polite smile, though her green eyes remain chillingly detached and calculating. The celebration continues as noble guests gather and mingle in the grand hall. Maribel's attention remains fixed on the mysterious boy she saw with the demonic dog. A noblewoman approaches to greet the princess, but Maribel's mind is elsewhere. She graciously interacts with her guests while staying alert for any sign of the boy. The guests appear as blurred figures as Maribel scans the room for another glimpse of him. Maribel realizes with a sudden jolt that the person next to the demon dog is Alan Reed. Her eyes widen in shock as she finally makes the connection to the fairy rumors.
A sudden, soft gasp sounds as Maribel is brought back to the present moment.
A young noble boy politely asks the princess if she will dance with him later.
A sharp, sudden biff sounds as Randy intervenes and aggressively blocks the suitor's toss.
Randy reminds his sister that she hasn't even made her official social debut yet. The boy's parents quickly lead him away to avoid the wrath of the overprotective crown prince. Randy smiles warmly at Maribel, asserting his role as her primary protector and dance partner. A sudden, aggressive shove sounds in a memory of Randy guarding his sister as a baby. He declares that it will be 100 years before any man is allowed to get close to her. A soft, cold tsk sounds as the suspicious maid offers Maribel a glass of tainted juice.
The princess prepares to take the drink, completely unaware of the poison hidden behind the maid's smirk.
A blond boy asks for a dance. Mirabel happily agrees to the waltz. Nearby nobles watch the pair with admiration.
The king and queen watch proudly.
The young pair dances amidst sunflowers. Mirabel feels like a true princess. A soft, rhythmic twirl sounds during gets.
Mirabel recalls that in her past life she was never allowed at parties except for the one where she discovered Salt's betrayal.
A soft, sudden stumble sounds mid-waltz.
The boy catches her for a file.
They continue their waltz with elegance. Mirabel looks on as Randy wishes her a happy birthday, while a nearby noble thinks he only treats her well because she is the princess. A noblewoman with a fan agrees naturally. Randy is mobbed by other girls. A soft rhythmic hush sounds as a maid offers the princess some juice, and Mirabel politely thanks her. The yellow fairy asks if she is tired as Mirabel considers the drink. The princess looks toward the balcony. Mirabel wonders where the boy went. A sudden, sharp shout sounds as the yellow fairy warns the princess to wait. The fairy flies toward the balcony. A maid tells a fellow servant to carry the pitcher, causing the suspicious maid to startle. The suspicious maid takes the pitcher and says it is good. The maid gasps at the missing cup. A servant looks around in confusion and wonders who took the missing cup from the table.
The garden remains quiet at night.
Mirabel follows the black-haired boy outside. The yellow fairy points out the terrifying devil dogs following the mysterious boy. The mysterious boy looks back with intensity. A soft, steady drip sounds into pitcher. A soft pouring splash sounds as the maid notes how good the poisoned drink looks.
A sudden sharp grab sounds as a guest demands a glass of wine from the maid.
A low, rhythmic chatter sounds as a guest offers a glass to Prince Randy, who accepts it happily. Randy drinks the tainted wine deeply.
A sudden, piercing scream sounds nearby.
A sudden, wet cough sound of blood.
Chaos erupts in the ballroom as people shout in disbelief and demand to know what is happening as guests collapse.
Mirabel gasps in horror at chaos. Randy lies motionless in his blood. A sudden, heavy dash sounds toward Prince. A sudden, pained wail sounds as the Queen and Mirabel scream for Randy while guests panic across the room. The mysterious boy watches as a terrified noblewoman screams for him to stay away. A soft, choked gasp sounds as Mirabel cries out for her brother while he bleeds on the floor. King Malik shouts for everyone to hurry and orders the gates closed to arrest any suspicious people. A soft, pained wheeze sounds from Raidi.
A sudden, sharp shout sounds as guards accuse a guest of giving the king a poisoned cup, though the man desperately protests his innocence.
Mirabel realizes the cup's true location. Mirabel remembers leaving her cup in the exact spot where the poison drink was taken. Mirabel realizes with horror that the maid was a traitor and she was the intended target of the assassination. The yellow fairy asks if it is truly the case. The yellow fairy distressedly explains that she felt something was wrong. The purple-haired fairy flies away happily. A group of fairies promises to watch over Mirabel. The queen desperately asks if Randy has been poisoned while holding him. A green-haired fairy watches the scene with a worried expression. The yellow fairy looks on with deep concern for the prince. A sudden, pained groan sounds as Mirabel wonders if the fairies can heal her brother while the queen cries out his name. Mirabel pleads for a miracle as Alan Reed observes the grim situation where the specific poison remains unknown. Mirabel and her yellow fairy companion look up in surprise. The queen watches in shock as the yellow fairy commands the palace staff to move quickly. Servants carry large tubs of water into the hall. A sudden, wet cough sounds as maids attend to a guest vomiting blood onto the floor. A noble points an accusing finger at Alan Reed, blaming him for the poisoning.
The man mocks Alan for being raised by a demon dog and using evil magic, while the boy remains silent.
Alan's eyes glow with an intense and menacing crimson light. The noble demands Alan's immediate arrest as the spectral wolf's presence grows more terrifying.
Mirabel stares at the mysterious boy in absolute shock.
A low, rumbling growl sounds as the black devil dog glares at the trembling noble. The crowd panics at the beast's appearance, while Mirabel watches the growing hostility with a heavy heart. The noble rages about a curse and insults Alan as the boy walks away from the chaos. Mirabel suddenly leaps forward to intervene, shouting for the man to stop his cruel accusations. The young princess continues to shout in defense of the boy. King Malik and the queen call out to Mirabel in total disbelief at her actions.
The noble shouts that children should stay out of it while his son's life is at risk, making Mirabel clench her fist in anger.
Mirabel argues that saving the victims is more important than blaming others while the fairies search for the true culprit.
A sudden wet splat sounds as the noble stands near his suffering son.
A soft, rhythmic bubble sounds as Maribel and the yellow fairy are startled by a mysterious voice. Wine glasses spill and shatter amidst the ballroom chaos. A sudden splashing rush sounds as water falls from the ceiling, drenching the confused guests and servants. A blue-haired mermaid emerges from a vortex of water above the stunned princess. Maribel and her fairy companion watch the magical arrival in awe. The mermaid explains that the Sea Queen is calling for her, leaving Maribel completely speechless.
A sudden, watery splash sounds as the mermaid grabs Maribel's hand and pulls her into the air.
The yellow fairy reaches out in panic as her friend is taken. Maribel is swept away into a swirling portal of water as the servants watch helplessly. The yellow fairy looks on with fear as Maribel disappears. Alan Reed stands firm as the water recedes from the grand hall. Maribel sinks deep into the dark, silent water. Underwater, two hands reach out to find a connection. The mermaid takes Maribel's hand and warns her that their time is limited. A soft, rhythmic bubble sounds as Maribel realizes with wonder that she can breathe beneath the waves. They swim together through a grand, light-filled underwater gate. Maribel explores the crystalline beauty of the magnificent sea palace. The mermaid leads the princess into a grand hall, announcing her arrival to her ruler. A majestic mermaid queen with a coral crown sits upon her deep sea throne. The Sea Queen gazes down at her guest with a calm expression. The Sea Queen welcomes her, remarking that Maribel is far too humble for someone of her status. Narration wonders if the princess is still haunted by the painful memories of her past life. The Sea Queen assures her she won't be blamed, but notes her modesty hides her true capabilities. Maribel listens intently as the Sea Queen approves of her arrival. The Sea Queen shifts the conversation to the urgent and deadly matter of the poison.
The Sea Queen reveals that a water fairy might be involved, which means simply cleansing the toxins won't be enough.
Narration questions who could be behind such a direct and dangerous infiltration of the royal palace. As the water spirit queen, she takes responsibility and offers Maribel a cup of ancient, sacred healing water. She believes that the unique cleansing properties of this sacred liquid will be sufficient to save the victims. A cup glows with a powerful, purifying, magical energy. Maribel worries it won't be enough for everyone, but the Sea Queen says she must use her own magic to increase its size. The majestic mermaid ruler sits regally upon her deep sea throne. The young princess looks up with a new sense of purpose. A soft, weary sigh sounds as the Sea Queen rubs her forehead in frustration. She warns her guests not to assume fairies are purely altruistic, as they often take their own interests for granted. Maribel argues that the fairies she knows are very kind and have never abandoned her in times of trouble. A sudden, loud laugh sounds as the Sea Queen mocks the princess's innocence while Maribel looks on in confusion.
She claims that fairies are not always cute creatures and will always get exactly what they want.
The Sea Queen's eye glows with a menacing light as she looms over the intimidated princess. She orders Maribel to return immediately and use her strength to help all the poison victims. A sudden sharp shout sounds as King Malik calls out his daughter's name as she begins to wake. The king and queen look on in total shock at the princess's sudden and mysterious reappearance. Chaos remains in the grand ballroom as poisoned guests lie motionless across the floor. King Malik holds his daughter close while she clutches the sacred chalice in her hands. Maribel's eyes widen as she begins to channel her internal power. She presents the magical cup to her father with a look of intense urgency. Maribel decides to rely on the secret magical techniques taught to her by Master Crawley. A soft, steady hum sounds as King Malik supports his daughter while a magical aura begins to envelop them. The princess knows she must gather as much magic as possible to save her brother. She prepares to cast a massive spell to amplify the healing water. Narration reveals that she has spent the last 12 years of her life learning the deepest secrets of magic. A brief, painful flash of her past life's suffering serves as motivation for her present actions. Maribel believes that her intense training has prepared her to handle even a crisis of this magnitude. She recalls studying the nature of spiritual and magical manifestations alongside her green-haired master. Narration explains that all forms of power are essentially different manifestations of a single source. She realizes that magic in its pure form is neither inherently good nor evil. Maribel boldly declares that she will use her magic exactly as she pleases to protect those she loves. The princess looks focused and slightly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of magic she is channeling. A sudden rhythmic splash sounds as the liquid in the cup begins to swirl and magically multiply.
Maribel slumps against her father's chest, looking completely drained after exhausting her magical reserves.
King Malik looks at the overflowing cup with an expression of total disbelief and awe. The queen quickly helps the unconscious Prince Randy drink the glowing, purified water. Servants and family members move through the ballroom to administer the cure to the other suffering guests.
Maribel clasps her hands together and bows her head in a silent, desperate prayer for her brother's recovery.
Randy's eyes slowly flutter open, revealing he is dazed but finally free from the deadly poison. A sudden, joyous shout sounds as the king and queen cry out Randy's name in relief. The ballroom is filled with empty buckets and pitchers as the immediate danger begins to pass. A sudden, sharp whoosh sounds as the fairies fly through the palace corridors to hunt for the traitor.
The purple-haired fairy excitedly points out that she has located the suspect's position.
The pink-haired fairy wonders what is wrong with the woman they have been tracking.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as they find the suspicious maid lying dead on the floor near a bottle of poison.
The maid's fixed, lifeless gaze reveals that she died before she could be captured or questioned.
Narration confirms that the maid responsible for the poisoning is dead as a green fairy flies nearby.
A chilling warning follows that the maid's partner in crime is still free and hiding somewhere in the palace.
Maribel is surrounded by admiring guests who are amazed by the miracle she performed to save the kingdom.
Princess Maribel laughs heartily with her companions after the crisis. A suspicious noblewoman in a red dress watches the princess.
A soft, weary sigh sounds as Maribel walks through the gardens with Will.
Narration notes the event continued as usual after the poisoning incident.
Maribel remembers being served a suspicious drink by a green-eyed maid.
The princess feels overwhelming guilt, realizing she was the assassin's target.
A low, rumbling growl sounds as Maribel encounters Alan Reed and his wolf.
Alan turns to leave the gazebo with his massive spectral companion.
A sudden, quick rustle sounds as Maribel catches the boy's weave. Maribel stops the mysterious boy while holding onto his arm tightly.
The princess looks up with eyes full of unwavering determination.
Alan continues walking while his wolf and the yellow fairy will clash.
The yellow fairy shouts in a fit of sudden and intense anger.
Alan looks back with a cold and seemingly disinterested expression.
The title card reveals that the fairy princess has decided on revenge.
A soft, sharp gasp sounds as Maribel looks down with a somber expression. Alan reflects on the situation amidst a backdrop of blooming red flowers.
Maribel apologizes profusely while the yellow fairy Will watches the interaction.
A sudden sharp crunch sounds as the wolf bites Will, though she survives. Alan gently comforts the large black wolf with a steady hand.
The black-haired boy asks the princess what she wants from him. Maribel insists that she simply wishes to speak with him directly.
She believes she can prove his innocence since few can hear fairies.
Alan coldly rejects her help, warning that she will become hated.
The boy claims that black dogs do not teach humans and leads.
A sudden quiet snap sounds as the noblewoman spies from the shadows. The woman realizes the princess was meeting with the boy in secret.
Maribel recounts the legend of a black dog taking him as a child.
Alan casts a stern look back as Will follows close behind. Will explains that being taken does not mean a real dog raised him. Narration explains that time flows differently for fairies compared to mortal humans. A farmer is shown dancing for years with magical fairy creatures. This supernatural tale is well known throughout the entire kingdom of Illit.
Maribel wonders if the black dog helped him return to the world.
Alan dismisses the creature, calling it an ominous symbol of certain death. Maribel shares her own feelings of isolation due to her magical abilities. A vision shows her caring for her younger brother in the past.
Maribel argues that power is neutral and the past defines no one.
A soft, rhythmic sniff sounds as the massive wolf approaches the girl. A sudden, gentle purr sounds as the wolf nuzzles Maribel's hand.
Maribel is delighted by the beast's affection while Alan watches her.
Alan admits that while he doubted fairies, they saved everyone today.
The princess looks at the boy with a soft and hopeful gaze. Will the fairy suddenly shouts that Maribel is completely wrong.
Maribel defends her choice to stay with him despite Will's warns.
A slight, subtle smile finally appears on the boy's guarded face.
Alan catches the tiny yellow fairy Will by the back of her gass.
The fairy demands to be let go immediately while struggling in his grip.
Alan reflects that he no longer blames others for the fate of sacrifices.
Maribel gazes up at the vast and shimmering starry night sky.
Maribel and Alan discuss poisons near the gazebo while Alan suggests a fairy might be behind the recent incident. Maribel considers the possibility of fairy-human cooperation and resolves to investigate the matter further before the scene shifts to the palace exterior.
Alan reflects on his missing brothers as a memory shows a boy surrounded by wolves. Maribel gasps at the massive black wolf while Alan stands calmly beside his spectral companion. The princess watches the yellow fairy.
Blue roses sparkle during a question.
Alan offers his hand in friendship while Maribel is stunned as Will watches the exchange. A sudden, quick grip sounds as they shake hands while Maribel happily accepts his offer of friendship.
Maribel laughs with genuine joy.
Alan looks confused by her laughter. The new friends stand together.
A sudden, sharp breath sounds as Randy runs toward them while calling out his name.
A voice asks about the hour. A sudden, firm tap sounds as Randy grabs Maribel's hands while she introduces her new friend. Alan offers a small, mysterious smile. Alan politely explains that he was simply conversing with the princess and his new friend. Maribel is shocked when Alan greets the prince while the red-eyed boy remains polite. She wonders if the boy is her brother's subordinate. Randy leads Maribel away from the massive beast while Will the fairy watches them. Randy notes that while he heard of Alan, his identity was kept vague by the Duke's family. Alan looks away and states the decision is final. Randy accuses Alan of only joining due to his feelings for Maribel while looking stressed.
Alan remains silent and seemingly disinterested.
Maribel finds the suggestion impossible and laughs heartily while Will agrees with her. The trio stands awkwardly at night. A sudden, quick rustle sounds as the noblewoman in the red dress flees. The woman in red urgently seeks out her father in the hallway. They discuss the royal support for Alan as the man expresses hatred for the boy and wishes the fairies had killed him. The man insists on involving the knights while the blonde noble promises to handle the situation.
Maribel meditates while Master Crawley watches her.
The princess focuses deeply on training. Master Crawley observes her progress.
Maribel visualizes the gathering of magic particles as she meditates on the floor.
She reflects on Alan's new role.
Maribel realizes her father chose Alan to help him adapt to the world.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounds as Randy and Alan enter the training hall. Black energy zaps Will as Maribel gasps while the fairy cries out for help. A sudden, crackling sizzle sounds as Master Crawley helps Maribel regain control of her magic. Master Crawley warns her about the dangers of losing control and interrupting meditation while Maribel apologizes.
A sudden, heavy stomp sounds as Randy apologizes for the interruption while Master Crawley looks on.
Maribel insists they didn't disturb her. Randy and Alan stand together.
Maribel asks about their travel plans.
Randy explains Maribel must attend the tea party alone while he leaves with Alan. The prince reveals they are heading to patrol the border. They discuss a monster that has returned after 12 years as Will and Master Crawley watch. A sudden, sharp glare sounds as Alan stares intensely. Alan confirms he is accompanying the prince because he wants answers. Maribel begs to join them and touts her magic skills to handle the monster. Randy shouts that her request is impossible. Alan Reed leads the royal carriage through the town as they begin their journey toward the border. Maribel reflects that she managed to accompany the group to see the monster despite her brother's initial refusal. Prince Randy sits across from her looking visibly stoic and annoyed by the turn of events. Narration notes that the prince remains deeply upset about his sister's presence on the mission. Randy sets strict conditions for her safety, demanding she stay within his eyesight, remain close to the group, and retreat into the wagon immediately if she senses any danger. The prince continues his overprotective lecture, insisting that she must tell him right away if she starts feeling unwell. Maribel laughs softly at her brother's intensity while Will the fairy watches them. A sudden, sharp jolt sounds as the carriage lurches violently, causing Maribel to cry out in alarm. Randy quickly moves to catch his sister as she is thrown from her seat by the impact. The princess looks up at her brother in wide-eyed surprise as he holds her steady.
Maribel gasps in horror as she realizes a monster is approaching them from the outside.
A massive, multi-eyed creature looms over the scene while the princess hears the clashing of swords nearby.
Randy rushes toward the carriage door to join the fray as the situation escalates.
The prince shouts at Maribel to stay where she is and not move until he gives further instructions. Maribel and Will wait inside the cabin, their expressions full of growing anxiety. She realizes that the sounds of combat suggest they are facing more than just a simple monster attack. Will stays alert and prepared to defend the princess if the fighting reaches them. Maribel is startled by a sudden booming sound echoing through the carriage. A strange, glowing artifact causes a sudden, rhythmic rattling sound as it vibrates with magical energy. Intense, booming vibrations sound as the carriage is buffeted by the shockwaves of the battle outside.
A group of hooded assassins surrounds the carriage, forcing the knights to draw their blades.
Mirabelle clasps her hands together and prays for the safety of her brother and Alan.
A fierce battle erupts in the woods between the royal guards and the mysterious attackers.
Randy grips his sword tightly, his expression hardened with determination.
A sudden, loud clang sounds as Randy parries a swift strike from one of the hooded figures.
The prince realizes with concern that their opponents are exceptionally strong and skilled.
Alan and Randy stand back to back, coordinating their movements to hold off the surrounding enemies.
Alan notices an ominous shadow forming nearby.
A sudden, deafening roar sounds as a massive creature reveals itself, terrifying everyone in the clearing.
One of the assassins uses a summoning tool, and Alan realizes the magnitude of the threat they now face.
Randy is shocked and wonders how the attackers could have possibly managed to summon such a powerful monster.
The two friends look on in disbelief as the towering beast prepares to strike.
Swords and daggers fly through the air as the warriors fight for their lives.
Alan and Randy stand their ground against the overwhelming force of the monster and the assassins.
A sudden, wet crunch sounds as Alan lunges forward and drives his blade into the monster's open mouth.
Randy shouts for him to be careful as the beast snaps its jaws around Alan's weapon.
Alan yells at the prince and his men to run away from the area immediately.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as the massive beast forces Alan back with a powerful blow.
Will's ears twitch as she catches a faint, high-pitched magical frequency. The fairy informs the princess that she can sense other fairies nearby in the forest.
Mirabelle recognizes the surroundings from a vision she had of a monster attacking her father years ago. A flashback shows her father being attacked by a similar beast while a younger Mirabelle struggled to control her emerging magic.
The vision shifts to show the princess as a frail and sickly infant.
Mirabelle feels a sudden, sharp tightening in her chest as she relives the stress of her past.
She remembers Master Crawley guiding her as a child, helping her understand the complexities of her power.
Young Mirabelle is seen studying magical texts in the gardens to harness her unique abilities.
Narration explains that she and Will spent their days together studying spiritual elements through nature. The two companions are shown playing and learning amidst a field of magical flora. Returning to the present, Mirabelle shouts out for her brother and Alan as the carriage door opens. The princess watches in awe as Alan and his massive spectral wolf prepare to clash with the multi-eyed monster.
The multi-eyed beast snarls menacingly.
Alan rushes toward the princess. Alan commands Mirabelle to return to the wagon immediately while Randy shouts in a line. The monster's maw reflects in her eye. Mirabelle prepares to cast her magic.
A magical shield blocks the jaws.
The magical blast repels the beast as Mirabelle falls to the ground with a pained arc.
Randy delivers a decisive sword strike.
The mustached knight slashes the beast.
The knight stands over the fallen creature. Alan ensures the princess is safe.
Mirabelle stares in disbelief and shock. Mirabelle looks at her companion and wonders about Alan.
Randy examines the beast's strange corpse. Mirabelle is horrified to see the beast's corpse transform into a black puppy and wonders if the monster was merely a mask.
Randy rushes to his sister and asks if she is all right as knights surround them.
The princess stands dazed as her name's called. Randy checks on his system's warbeing. The royal knights stand in formation. The blonde knight watches with suspicion. Alan observes the remains of the beast. The blonde knight remains silently watchful. Randy notes that the attackers were not mere thieves but moved with the discipline of trained soldiers. The captured assassins are bound tightly. Randy speculates that the attackers might be Wood Kingdom spies disguised as bandits for reconnaissance.
Alan stares thoughtfully at Horizon.
A boot approaches the fallen creature.
Alan senses the blonde knight's hostility. Alan remains quiet and deep in thought.
The party gathers around the site. A boot heartlessly crushes the puppy.
Alan lets out a furious shout.
Alan stares down the blonde knight. Alan demands that the man remove his dirty feet from the creature immediately. The royal carriage sits amidst the trees. Mirabelle gazes anxiously out the window.
The group stands together in the clearing.
Mirabelle opens the carriage curtain and wonders what is happening outside. Mirabelle runs toward the tense confrontation. Mirabelle reaches the group as Texan tries. A voice accuses Alan of deciding to betray his country.
Mirabelle is stunned by the sudden accusation.
Alan maintains a cold, intense gaze. Alan's spectral wolf looms by him.
The blonde knight calls Alan a bastard and challenges him to a fight.
A hand grips the sword hilt. The blonde knight draws his blade.
Alan yells for everyone to stop immediately.
The spectral wolf threateneth the knight. The blonde knight smirks and claims that Alan has finally revealed his true nature. A sudden guttural growl sounds as the spectral wolf snarls at the blonde knight. The royal knights draw their swords. An aerial view of the clearing. Alan stands resolute beside his wolf. The blonde knight declares that Alan's actions have left them with no alternative but to use force. The blonde knight orders his men to seize Alan immediately as the group begins their pursuit.
Maribel watches the developing conflict with horror. She whispers his name with concern.
Shy forest spirits watch from the chase.
Dappled light shines through the leaves.
Alan faces his pursuers with determination.
A sudden, quick dash sounds as the blonde knight points out that Alan is attempting to escape.
Maribel cries out Alan's name as Randy approaches to ask what has occurred.
A sudden, rapid scurry sounds as Randy runs toward his sister to check on her well-being.
Maribel calls out to her brother urgently. She insists that they must help Alan.
Randy stares at her with a troubled expression. Maribel questions her brother's silence and hesitation. Maribel argues that they must refute the accusations while Randy states the Wood Kingdom summoned the beast. Randy insists on interrogating Alan due to his connection to the monster despite Maribel's defense of him.
Randy questions how they can trust Alan while Maribel privately resolves to believe in him.
Randy questions why black dogs would greet Alan and suggests he might be seeking vengeance.
Randy mentions the fairy-assisted poison from her past to justify his deep suspicions of the situation.
Maribel asks Will if she can contact other fairies to provide some form of assistance for Alan. Will closes her eyes to focus.
Will explains that elemental fairies usually only communicate within their own groups, showing various different spirits. She notes that their paths rarely cross except during rare events, leaving them with little in common.
Maribel is stunned by a sudden realization.
A shout echoes through the trees.
The blonde knight orders Alan's arrest and authorizes the use of weapons with the Marquis permission.
A sudden, frantic pounding sounds as Maribel ignores Randy's command to stop and runs toward the fight.
A sudden howling gust sounds as the blonde knight is startled by a powerful leaf-filled wind.
Will realizes that this massive magical surge is originating from deep within the forest.
The blonde knight commands a full search of the area as Will flies away into the light.
Randy shouts for the knights to make Maribel's safety their top priority as he pursues her.
Maribel runs alone through the sun-drenched woods.
She calls out for Will in distress.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as wood spirits observe the princess from the high branches.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Maribel pauses, sensing something hidden behind the nearby leaves.